This episode is sponsored by DS, a team of makers, marketers, and entrepreneurs that help businesses transform their brand experience and unlock growth like never before. Are you a CMO, founder, or business leader looking to level up your brand and marketing? Head over to weareds.com and let's explore what is next for your business. That's weareds.com. Visit us to learn more. Hey, what's going on, entrepreneurs? This is Robert Roach, executive producer for Forward Obsessed. And if you are building businesses, you know that you never have enough resources to get everything done that you need to get done for your new business. All right, and that's why we're proud to say that one of our sponsors is Das Good. That's DAAS Good. Das Good is a done-for-you, creative, on-demand service for entrepreneurs. This is for businesses who need great creative without a huge budget and without a lot of time to focus on it. If you want to get the important things done like pitch decks, awesome branding, incredible websites, but you want to do it without the hassle, without the headaches, without the massive budget, then Das Good is for you. Head over to dasgood.design. That's DAAS good.design. Mention that Forward Obsessed sent you and save $1,000 off of your first month of service. Let us know what you think of them. We're excited to hear about it. And with that, enjoy the show. Remember, stay Forward Obsessed.
Welcome to Forward Obsessed, where we talk to breakthrough business leaders and rising entrepreneurs about their journeys, origin stories, and aha moments.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Forward Obsessed. I'm your co-host David Salinas, and today's guest is Lindsey Andrews. During COVID, if you ordered liquor and had it delivered to your house, there's a high likelihood you ordered it from Minibar, Lindsey's company that she recently exited. Lindsey takes us through her upbringing in New York City, her educational journey. She goes to some of the best schools in the world, Stanford and Wharton Business School. She learns the power of network. She'd meet someone in business school that she'd find her aha moment with during a takeout session on her Takeout Tuesday dinners with her friend. She'd work at some of the greatest places like Fresh Direct and Amazon and learn her way around entrepreneurship and e-commerce and customers. And then ultimately, she would get her aha moment that would spark the beginning of Minibar. Through an 8-year journey, she would take that to an exit, to Reserve Bar. She would take a little bit of time off and then start her new journey with her newest app called Revito. This is a great conversation with another great entrepreneur. We hope you like it. Please be sure to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're using. And don't forget to visit our sponsors. Thank you so much for staying Forward Obsessed. Hello and welcome to this episode of Forward Obsessed. I'm your co-host David Salinas, joined by Pizzena. And today we have in from New York City, Lindsey Andrews. Lindsey, so happy to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Lindsey, we always start off the show by trying to find the kernel of in you as to where entrepreneurship blossomed. So in order to do so, we like to go back to your childhood, where you grew up, your parents, your grandparents, and trying to figure out exactly where the inspiration came from. So tell us a little bit about you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York City. I've lived there pretty much my whole life, except college and business school. At some points, I think I'm not that adventurous in terms of where I live, but maybe I guess a little bit more of a risk taker in terms of my career. I grew up in New York. My grandfather ran a drug company, and so we did talk about business, and I was exposed to a lot of that at a young age, which I think makes a difference in people. Having that kind of informal education, just hearing what's going on around you and like stock splits and like random like mergers breaking up when you're younger and barely know what it means.
I still barely know what it means, but I'm in my 40s.
Well, I haven't yet taken a company public, so I haven't experienced it. So I feel like I was always exposed to that. Unfortunately, my father died at a young age. He was like a banker, but and my mom was amazing. She was a stay-at-home mom, but like did everything, has more energy. I think she could run a Fortune 500 company without any issues. She's extremely capable. And so I just feel like I had a really supportive upbringing. I excelled at some things, was horrible at other things. I would say like I was more of, it's almost like an entrepreneur. It's a roller coaster. I feel like I was not middle of the ground at anything. I was very bad at some things like languages and very good at others like math. So I feel like, just being exposed to a lot, being in New York City, seeing everything. I feel like we went to tons of museums, Broadway shows, and just kind of seeing the breadth of stuff you can accomplish in your lifetime is important as opposed to kind of a more myopic view.
How old are you when your father passed?
10.
Interesting. So that's a thread. We've talked to people that are entrepreneurs. So they say there was a Malcolm Gladwell book. I'm gonna butcher it, but Rob will figure it out and throw it in the show notes. But it talks about if you lose a parent before the age of 15, there's like 90-something% of people actually have major mental health issues and they suffer in life. And then there's this small percentage that thrive and go on to start companies and become very, very successful and have the tenacity to do so. So maybe we're finding some of that with you today.
Yeah, I think
I also lost a parent at 12. So yeah. So and we've had several entrepreneurs that we've had on the show that have had that.
It's come up quite frequently.
Yeah, and I feel like I've read stats where like being raised in a single parent home is kind of detrimental to your trajectory and success. Though my mother got remarried and we were raised in a very, healthy, like loving house. But it's interesting to say that because my sister, who's 3 years younger than I am, so she was 6, she's a very successful writer. So she's written like a book with critical acclaim. And so maybe that's, I don't know, has something to do with it.
Yeah. And kudos to your mom. Your mom's clearly a strong woman and a smart woman that was able to keep you guys on the right path. Yeah, it's not often. It happens a lot. I mean, that's why, especially in urban environments, you see so many kids that have so many issues because of the single parent household and that kind of thing. But there's this small percentage of people that somehow the cards are dealt correctly. And
yeah, and I feel like in many other respects, we were very lucky. Like went to private school, which most people don't get to do. And so.
Indeed. And then that schooling took you to, I mean, you've gone to like the who's who of schools.
I have. Though, funny, I have made some mistakes. I went to boarding school for 9th and 10th grade and hated it. So came back to New York City. So I did fail at that minor part of my education. I was homesick. It wasn't a fit. I'd been in an all-girls school. I feel like co-ed schooling was like overwhelming and I was like awkward and shy and a disaster. So I came back to New York and I think that helped kind of my trajectory. And I don't know if I would have like gone to Stanford if I had stayed where I was and was unhappy.
And how was the education? So Stanford, so you go out to the West Coast and this is you're leaving the house officially post boarding school and you studied, what'd you get your BA in?
I studied like urban studies, architecture, and then minored in civil engineering.
Okay. Why that path?
I thought I wanted to be an architect, and then I interned at architecture firms, looked at going to graduate school, and it seemed like a miserable, grueling path. I think I would have had to go to school for 5 years. It's miserable testing. I feel like the teacher's goal is to like basically make you cry. So I decided, so my first job out of college, I kind of tangentially stayed somewhat close and did real estate investment and development.
Okay.
So kind of close to, building, and I like building things. But I ended up not pursuing architecture. Maybe one day I'll get to build my own house or something.
I'm a big designer, and I feel like every person that I've met that is an entrepreneur has like some type of building in their background, whether it's architecture or, comp sci or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. What was not necessarily the thing that pulled you away from architecture, but what was the thing that pulled you towards architecture when you were younger? Like what was the sort of...
I mean, I'm pretty handy. Like I can follow instructions and build furniture. Like I can follow directions for most things and assemble most things. I like creating and building. I feel like there's a real sense of accomplishment and it's a visual like indication of success. Like I had a pile of stuff here and now I have the successful built thing and I did that. So I wanted to do that. I feel like I'm interested in houses and real estate. I feel like most people are. I don't know. I feel like it's a fun pastime to like dream about giant houses, what you want in them. But ultimately, I also felt like perhaps I was worried I wasn't creative enough and my thoughts and like ideas might not be unique enough to be an architect. And I feel like it was like a long path. And so decided to pivot away, but I enjoyed all my classes and I'm glad that's what I did for undergrad.
No, I love it. I mean, ultimately, you went on to build companies. So
yes.
Buildings, companies,
exactly.
I would argue companies are a little bit harder to build because, wood and concrete works one way.
Right.
people don't work quite.
Oh my gosh.
Very complex organisms, right?
Yes,
So
totally agree.
no, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome.
Where did the doubt come in Stanford? Was it just a talent? Because I'd imagine Stanford, you were amongst like incredibly talented people. Was it the people that you were around, or was it just you?
It's a good question. I think so. I interned at an architecture firm, Cohn Pedersen Fox in New York City, and I just kind of saw what people were doing, and it was. I mean, obviously, I was an undergrad intern without accreditation. I was like tinkering on like light fixtures for industrial bathrooms. So that not the most exciting. So I just thought the path was like very long until you got to do the exciting, cool stuff. And I feel like almost maybe as an entrepreneur too, like I've never really had a job for more than like Minibar is the longest job I've had, but more than like 2 to 4 years. So maybe I'm a little, I don't want to say ADD, but like this shiny thing. So I think maybe I just kind of was ready to try other things.
You didn't see an immediate payoff. You felt like you were going to be.
Right.
Yes, it's going to be a little bit more difficult.
And that's also why I feel like, would I be the best working at a giant company where you have to go through like 30 layers of, people and approvals to get something built for 5 years out? I feel like I like the immediacy and like instant gratification of startups.
Love that. How was Stanford as a school? I'm always interested in hearing about these.
I loved it. I thought it was fabulous. I mean, the people are great. There's so much you can do. The weather is awesome. It's obviously very different today than I think it was then. Like Palo Alto was not the crazy ecosystem and place it is today. Also, I feel like people have said that Stanford's gotten less fun. I had fun. I had great friends. They're still my great friends. So I thought it was a wonderful experience, both from a social perspective, an education perspective, a cultural perspective. And I also really wanted to be somewhere warm.
Yeah. Yeah. Get me out of New York, right?
Yeah. Let's take a break from the snow. I missed the seasons.
Looking back, is there anything that you wish you had gotten advice around when you went to Stanford that you could have done differently?
I would say 2 things. I would say one, and I think I made the same mistake that I at Wharton as well. I feel like it's such a risk-free environment to start something. Like you're not giving up a salary, you're not giving up health insurance. The risk is very much lower. So like you should start a business or something, or like a small side hustle to see what it's like and get that experience. Because I feel like real world experience is very different than a classroom experience. And then the other was I love Stanford so much I didn't contemplate going abroad. And I kind of regret that. I feel like it's also a risk-free way to like live somewhere else. Now it's like, would I do it? Should I do it? Would it be disruptive to my children to like take them out of school and move to another country? Or would it be the greatest experience of our lives? And I just don't know. And now like my family's in New York, so I don't know if it would be even harder. It's nice to have them there and that help and infrastructure. So I feel like that's another regret I have from undergrad.
Yeah. It's also scary with like COVID to like think that like something stupid could happen and you get stuck in a country.
Totally.
Did you go right to Wharton after
No,
Stanford?
I worked for
Entrance?
I graduated in 2003 and went to Wharton in 2007. So for 4 years I feel like, which is the average kind of break.
What did you do in between?
I worked in real estate investment and development. Kind of tangentially to architecture. And I joke, I've always had to commute to my jobs. And it wasn't until I started Minibar. So I basically had to create my own company to be able to work on the island of Manhattan. So I worked in real estate investment development in Greenwich and then Stanford.
Got it.
So I commuted every day.
What was it about that job that made you decide to go back to school?
I decided I wanted to switch industries. And it wasn't.
She didn't love what you were doing.
And I feel like business school is slightly less valuable if you're staying in the same job. You could probably move up the ranks faster potentially if you just stay put. But if you want to switch jobs and industries, I think it's a fabulous path. And it's like such a great learning experience. You can go do internships, you can meet other people, and it looks good on your resume while you're kind of switching and trying to figure out what's next.
And then you went to one of the best business schools in the world.
Yes, I went to Wharton, which was wonderful also. Philly, so close to New York. And I met tons of wonderful friends there. And I feel like it's funny. I have friends that I have known since I was 1 or 2, and they're still my best friends. But it's funny making friends later in life because you're a different person and you're more mature. So I feel like a lot of those friends, we have similar kind of professional interests and have like more to share in that regard because we met later in life and at Wharton. So it kind of draws similar people in some ways.
And we'll touch on this later, but you ended up meeting your Minibar co-founder at Wharton.
Yes.
We'll come back to that later. But so you go to, literally the best of the best when it comes to Wharton, and you have this, what seems like a pretty transformational experience in that now you're shifting careers. You're really starting to figure out like who you are and ultimately what you're going to do in this world, right? It sounds like this is where the kind of Lindsey purpose kicked in, is if my notes are showing correct. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Like I was probably a little lost and wasn't sure what I wanted to do post my first job out of college. And then I tried to take advantage. So at Wharton this summer I did 2 internships. I did a mini one at Guild Group, but they were like less than a year old. So it was really early days. And that was my first exposure to like really early days startups. And then I did a traditional like MBA internship at American Express, which was a different kind of perspective because I kind of focused on marketing. And so seeing kind of early stage and what like one of the best brands that's so established at a giant company.
Talk about a dichotomy though, right? It's like flash sales, e-commerce, high growth startup, corporate, financial services, stable, giant
benefits.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
So
It's like hair on retirement. It's like hair on fire and retirement.
yeah.
Right. And I feel like now with perspective, I'm like, I think the smarter people go to steady, stable jobs without the crazy risk. And you will probably, on an average basis, do better over the lifetime of your career from like a financial perspective, as opposed to like a crazy roller coaster that's all risk.
Mm-hmm. That's a white paper I need to see pop up in my feed. I would have directly gone against that. So how did you land at Fresh Direct of all companies? Because that's fairly different from any of the things that you had come to experience at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was still like marketing and e-commerce. A friend of mine worked there. She was senior in the merchandising category. And so she introduced me to it. And so I ended up in the marketing department. And it was like a brand I liked. It's, every New Yorker likes to press a button, which, I stayed in that even when I started a company, and get everything delivered. So it was a really fun brand to work on, and it gave me, more exposure to e-com marketing. They were a very early startup, so they weren't early stage when I joined.
It was a pretty new behavior too, right? At that time, you think about 2009, 2011, I think was the years.
Yes, exactly.
So the world we live in today, where everything's a button push away, like we didn't yet have the one-click Amazon experience.
No.
We didn't yet have the Uberification.
We didn't have like iPhones.
Right.
Like it was, they were brand new, so it was.
Yeah.
Most people didn't have apps. It was very early days. And I feel like the field was littered with failed, like Webvan, Cosmo. I don't know if that was in like the 90s in New York City. Yeah. Cosmo.com. So I feel like there had been many failures in the category, but I feel like Fresh Direct did a really good job. And, their food was extremely fresh, easy to order, and like they, valued quality a lot. So that was a great experience for me to kind of see. I guess that was like my first real job in e-commerce.
Yeah. I want to ask a question on that. So I'm a big trends person, and I just love soaking up information and finding patterns in the noise. Just for the audience, can you talk a little bit about you over the period of time that you were there, got really into trend analysis, was a big part of your role. Could you maybe talk a little bit about just how does one spot a trend, and just any kind of takeaway advice that you could provide for that, and what ultimately is the thing to do and the thing not to do? And I'd have to imagine that you and your teams experienced both in that time.
Yeah. I mean, looking back on it, Fresh Direct was extremely data-driven and extremely analytical. Like every email, it was like they had to hold out and sell what the lift was and was it paying off to like give a free delivery offer. And while I was there, I looked a lot at kind of expanding into new markets. So a lot of like Westchester, Connecticut expansion. And the trends and the behavior was extremely different. Like the average order size was pretty much double in those places. They had bigger houses. They stocked up for the week. So there were trends in terms of like basket size, what was in the basket, day of the week ordering, which kind of was good exposure for me too, because it was like an on-demand business, which I ended up obviously starting one. but it was totally the opposite of alcohol. Like Fresh Direct, it was Sunday, Monday, family stocking up for the week, and it was so busy and the time slots would fill up. Whereas Minibar, the busiest days were, not surprisingly, Friday and Saturday, because that's when people want to buy alcohol. So it was totally different kind of buying experiences. And then, you know, I feel like there's a lot that goes into it, Fresh Direct, like how much people are buying and like expiration dates and getting it to people. Like there's cold stuff, there's, you know, shelf stable stuff. And then like we had like rooms that were just for like bananas because they couldn't be cold and they weren't shelf stable and they needed their own like specific room that was warmer. And so it was, I mean, obviously, and then getting exposure to like delivery logistics and all of that, which I was not part of, but obviously got exposure to, and like how complicated it was moving so much food and so many deliveries around Manhattan, which is so dense and it's expensive to get the stuff in there and the cooling trucks. So it was a highly complex business that it was great to kind of get my foot in the door with.
At that stage, did you start to have these kind of glimmers and sparks of entrepreneurship yet, or were you still thinking you were going to do the ride through, you know, bigger?
I feel like I always like was coming up with like random ideas, but none of them like ever felt good enough to take like the scary jump. And at that time, I was like single, so I like would have had no salary, like no health insurance, like so it was a lot scarier then, and I just didn't have an idea that I felt was good enough. So I did think about it, and I did talk to my like Wharton friends, Lara being one of them, my co-founder at Minibar. And we always kind of brainstormed and like flushed ideas out if they were kind of medium good. But none of them kind of panned out.
Nice. So then you go from entrepreneur-driven venture one to one that I'm sure many of the folks in the audience have heard of, a company called Amazon. So talk a little bit about that.
So then I joined Quidsi, which was founded by Mark Lohr and Vinny Baharara, which was awesome. And I joined actually the week I think they closed the Amazon deal. So, you know, obviously I started on like a Monday, and I think that like Wednesday was the giant party that they were throwing to celebrate. So it was a little awkward going to a party the third day of work when you barely know anyone. But yeah, I mean, I feel like when I joined, it was still very much Quidsi. And then over time, you saw more processes and like more layers get put in, and like it was harder to get a contract approved or move forward with stuff because like the legal scrutiny was a lot more heightened. But Quidsi attracted, and I feel so lucky to have gotten to work there, the best talent. It is maybe my best network, is Quidsi. So not Wharton, not Stanford. The Quidsi, my coworkers have all gone on to do amazing things. So many of them have been entrepreneurial and started new businesses that have been super successful.
Why do you think that was the case? Maybe just for the audience who doesn't know, could you talk a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, so Quidsi, the main consumer brand was diapers.com, and then they launched soap.com, wag.com, so drugstore, pet, and a couple other brands. And they hired just like hungry people that had gone to the best schools, generally like right out of college or right out of business school, and kind of let them run with the brand or marketing or merchandising. And it was just like this wonderful collaborative environment. I don't know what Mark and Vinny's secret hiring spark genius was, but I lucky to have gotten a job there and have met all those wonderful people. Some of them I've started businesses with, others have been super successful, others have helped me get like intros to investors. Everyone's just, no one has like an attitude. No one thinks they're better than everyone. I feel like it's just like a group of like nice, hardworking, smart people.
So I noticed that in Wharton, the show notes, you talked quite a bit about networking. Obviously, when they say you go to these schools, it's for the network. And then Amazon, so network is clearly shining. How do you keep a network fresh?
I think that's a good question. I mean, I think it's kind of when people from your network reach out to you and ask for help, you do it because it's kind of paying it forward. Maybe that exact person you won't need something from. But if you just kind of keep helping people, they'll help you when you need introductions. I mean, I go on LinkedIn all the time. I'm like, who is my common connection to X? And asking them for an introduction.
So really give to get, really karmic energy in a sense.
And I mean, I feel like I'm not the biggest extrovert, but like I try to like go to like networking things or conferences when I feel like they'll be valuable. And like, so you see people you haven't seen in a year or so you're top of mind, you can catch up, tell them what you're doing, hear what they're doing. But it is sometimes hard to motivate, especially like a cocktail thing or a dinner and it's dark and it's late and you have kids and that's the time they're home and you want to see them. So I find like, actually, like breakfasts and lunches and stuff like that are almost easier because it's less impactful on your.
I'm the king of breakfast. Everybody's like, oh, can we get together? I'm like, sure, breakfast?
Yeah, I'm like,
I love the breakfast.
Totally. I'm like, I'm available starting at 8 a.m. Anyone,
How early?
Meet anyone.
How early do you want to go? Because you're right, the motivation is not there. I saw a great quote the other day. It says the motivation is not always there, but discipline is, right? So as long as you have the discipline to make the connections, reach out to people, stay in touch, use LinkedIn, go to networking events, have breakfasts and stuff like that, things will stay alive.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. So then Amazon, so you were there at the point of acquisition, and what was that like, just seeing, this behemoth sort of take over this startup company?
I mean, we were in Jersey City. Amazon's obviously headquartered in Seattle. So it wasn't so pervasive and like every day, but there became more rules. It was really slow to get partnerships done and projects done because it had to go through legal scrutiny. Maybe it became slightly less fun, but obviously like Amazon is a great place to be a part of. They're building cool things. They're on the forefront. It's an amazing brand that everyone knows. And, their options do really well. Like their stock is just up and to the right. So I sometimes look at the options I got and I'm like, oh, what did I do? Why did I leave?
Outside of the aha moment you had to spin off into your own company, was there anything that stands out to you in your Amazon time that you've looked back and you're like, wow, I'm so glad I learned these things there?
I think it was getting a lot of exposure. I mean, some of that I got at Fresh Direct. So for example, both companies did tons of direct mail. So that's something I'd never had exposure to. And learning how to do that. I think it was also kind of the forefront, and we also couldn't do a lot of some marketing they wouldn't let us do back in the day, like Facebook stuff, because they didn't want to expose their customer data potentially, and do lookalike models. And so I feel like doing a startup, you could be a little bit more willy-nilly and move fast and break things, whereas at Amazon, they're a target. You had to be really careful, and they'd gotten to where they are today because they had grown smart and they had put those guardrails in place. So I respected it, but it also, for entrepreneurs, I think you kind of buck against and get a little caged in, and you want to move faster and you want to see change. So I feel like they're the pros and cons to growing really big and successful.
Did you see a lot of people that wanted to leave because they felt stifled?
I think when I left, a lot of people started leaving. It was kind of all of us in that kind of time frame. And most people went and did did a lot of startups themselves. Yeah. So coworkers of mine, Gail and Christina started Primary Children's Clothing. Carolyn started Chief, so women's networking. So I just, tons of people left and started new things. Ajay, who I sat next to, started Urban Stems. We left the same day. We started our companies at the same time, and he was in, flower delivery. I was in alcohol delivery. So we had lots of sharings and learnings between each other. And so those networks and kind of relationships have been awesome over the years.
I find that when I used to consume too much alcohol, I would also need flour the next day. So I can relate
exactly. And we did do partnerships because, maybe we weren't huge on Mother's Day and that was their Super Bowl. So how could we, email our list and promote them then, and then vice versa when it was, near December and stuff like that when everyone's buying.
Partnership unlocks profits, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's go back to you're in Amazon, you have an aha moment. Walk us through that moment. What happened? Where were you? Take us to this.
So my co-founder Lara and I, we lived a block apart from each other, and we would have takeout Tuesday. At my apartment, we would order Seamless, and one Tuesday, disaster. I'm out of white wine. we figure we must be able to press a button, much like we did for our food, and get it delivered. And what we realized was we couldn't. We're like, why? Like, can we legally do this? Like, it's a heavy, bulky consumable. It's even better delivered than food, which can like degrade and be cold or whatever. Like a bottle of Tito's is a bottle of Tito's. And so we dove in. We looked, a lot at like the legal and what we could do and different business models. And at that point, I was lucky enough to be married and have health insurance and, someone to help put food on the table. And so we worked on it for a couple of months, just kind of exploring and building a deck and whatnot. And then we ultimately took the plunge and did it full time. We figured, we needed to fundraise, and who's going to give people money that have one foot in and aren't committing there full time.
Did you try beforehand? And did you get that feedback, or did you just kind of know that?
No, I think we kind of knew that. We had put together a deck and we'd set up meetings. We were also like, we can't do a full-time job and be like meeting with people and fundraising. It's just not tenable. So those various reasons is why we finally left our jobs, and did it full time.
And so now I have to ask, fundraising as a first-time entrepreneur and a woman, which is difficult. Walk us through that.
Yeah, I feel like both of us have very good networks. I would say we're both very good at getting meetings. I don't know if we're like the best at closing them, but we were very good at getting meetings, and people were very supportive. I would say some things, we ended up raising more than we had expected because everyone told us you need to raise more, take more money. So when we started, we were raising like $500,000 to $750,000. We ended up raising $1.8 million.
Was that the right advice?
Definitely.
Because a lot of people say that. And
it's definitely the right advice.
Yeah.
Because also your next round is going to take however many months to raise. So you need that extra buffer to get you. And also if you're out of money, people know they can take advantage of you and like string you along, and you lose a lot of your power. But I would say
what if you over-dilute? Is there a downside to over-raising in your first round?
Maybe, but like I'd rather own a smaller amount of a huge company than a big amount of a tiny company. Maybe that's the wrong attitude, but...
Slice of a watermelon is better than a whole grape, right?
Exactly. But we did make mistakes. We did a rolling close because we had hired our CTO, so we needed to pay someone. So we did a rolling close, but then the people didn't feel any urgency to close and wire the money. So that was a challenge. So finally in mid 2014, we're like, okay, we're closing on this date. Are you in? Are you out? So we learned over time that we had to provide a little more structure and urgency, and that helped. But the rolling close is definitely like a mistake we made, but it was a necessary evil also. So it was what it was. And we were lucky to have some great early investors, like Female Founders Fund, which we were introduced to by former coworkers of mine at Quidsi. We had other, VCs like Great Oaks Venture Capital, Winklevoss Capital, and then it was mostly like friends and family.
Would you say that the road to raising the capital out was easy, or did you find it like hard and tumultuous? Like, what were some of the things you were up against during that process?
I think some challenges were, so we started before we launched. We started when it was like more of an idea.
Yeah.
So in some ways it's harder because you've nothing to show, but in some ways it's easier because they don't expect any metrics or data. We then launched February 2014 and we were still fundraising. So then people wanted to see data and metrics. So then it just like changed the bar, raised the bar. It just totally changed the landscape and what people were asking. So I think that was hard. And I think it's, the personality, who you're going to, but it's sometimes easier to raise on an idea as opposed to when you people can always find issues with your metrics, issues with your growth trajectory, issues with how much you're growing, how much you're paying for a customer, your exposure, your downloads, whatever it is. So I think data sometimes can make it harder at that early stage.
What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned in that first 1.8 million?
A lot, no means no for now. We went door to door to liquor stores, selling our wares, basically being like, we've got this idea, come get on board.
Were you selling yourself?
Yeah.
Knocking on doors?
Oh yeah, totally. definitely. And that is not my personality. So it's something I learned in the positive. Like, I am not a salesperson, but like I had to do it and I did it. And like when you closed a deal, you felt good, but I was definitely out of my comfort zone. I would say Lara, my co-founder, is more of an extrovert. So we were both had similar backgrounds in terms of like marketing, e-commerce, Wharton, but we have different styles and personalities, and I think we complemented each other. So that was helpful. But we would do it together generally.
And the liquor stores in Manhattan are mostly mom and pops.
By law, since it's illegal to own more than one liquor store, they are all mom and pops. There are some big ones, but they just have like one in the city or state. Like Astor is a huge name brand, but it's just one. So we really pounded the pavement and we got a ton of no's. A couple early ones took, the leap of faith with us. And then once we were up and running and we could send liquor stores, like be like, go talk to this store, like hear how we, what we're doing, that we're good partners, we're sending you business, there's like no upfront cost. And that made it a little easier with each sale. But, liquor stores are generally owned by older men that, people would literally say to us, like, is the internet here to stay? And we're like, it is here to stay. Or this is a good idea. People do want to shop online.
And you were the first, right? Because we had a space in WeWork in Midtown, and there was a startup in there. Was it Drizzly? Who was remember the guy who's right across? Was it Drizzly that was there?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
But that was much later.
Was it?
Yeah, so they were a big competitor of ours. They launched out of Boston.
Okay.
We launched in New York. So we kind of didn't know about each other, but launched at the exact same time in separate cities.
Isn't it amazing how there's always someone on the other side doing the exact same thing as you?
So we were the biggest player in New York. They were the biggest player in Boston. We actually didn't go to Boston for years because we were like, a marketing dollar is better spent in many other regions because we're not competing against like the incumbent.
What did the category look like at that time? Just for the audience, because obviously now we all hear it and go like, well, duh, that's commonplace, right? But back then, was it just you two in the category or really creating this new category?
It was predominantly the two of us, yes. There were some other small players. Some of them were like focusing on like corporate business and like that type of business. But we were really the main players in wine and spirits. Beer, the legal regulations, like you could order that maybe from some other apps because grocery and convenience stores sold beer.
Sure.
But wine and spirits was very specific. So when we launched, also we only sold wine and spirits. And then a couple months later, because we needed to have dual cart checkout and 2 credit card charges, 2 deliveries, and like the messaging and all of that, because you were getting, placing an order from a convenience store and then from a liquor store. They were both. They processed the payment. So on your credit card, it would say, convenience store A and then liquor store B. And neither of them would really say Minibar. So sometimes people were confused. And integrating with all those payment processors was definitely a challenge and took some time.
Talk to us about positioning. So one of the things I know from anybody that has gone to Wharton is the Wharton MBA is known for really good marketing education and really good positioning. So with you being one of 2 in the category, I'm a firm believer that when you create the category or own the category, your likelihood of success is that much more, assuming everything else goes as planned, right? And I say that with a wink. But talk to us a little bit about just how did you position that messaging, that market at the time when you were really trying to own this category that didn't exist yet?
Yeah, so we, when we created the app, we kind of said, like, make this gender neutral, but if you're going to make it ever so slightly towards one gender, make it slightly more male, because we felt a female would happily shop from a more male brand, but a male didn't want to shop from a female brand. So we thought that would make us like more universally accepted across, because obviously anyone 21 plus, we wanted that drank responsibly as a customer. We didn't want to alienate everyone. We also, our app was a little bit like higher end, sleeker. We appealed more, I think. We had a higher average order size. We sold more wine, which is the highest margin alcohol. So that also made us friendly to the liquor stores that we sold wine and had a higher average order size.
So that premium design helped you?
It did. So we had kind of
Because a lot of founders don't invest in design early. So I was just curious why you made that decision.
We definitely did. And that's what we like to do. Like, we're marketers, we're brand builders. We're really excited about that. And actually, it's one of the things we had to kind of like reshift after we launched. We were like, ooh, we need to actually focus a lot more on the back end, because if we don't have the right products from the store ingested in, we don't have the right product catalog, there aren't images, we have the wrong inventory number, or wrong pricing, like that is a horrible experience if we have to like have customer, if it's late, if it's out of stock, whatever it might be. So we then shifted and built a lot more tools for the liquor stores and made sure we were like integrating with their POS systems and stuff like that to get better data. And over time, we had to spend a lot of time on data because it was a mess. Like it's a mom and pop liquor store, a random person's just inputting and misspelling everything, or like, it's orange instead of l'orange, or whatever fancy, name the alcohol brand has made.
I'm surprised that Amazon didn't beat that customer obsessity while you were there.
So we really had to build a massive data catalog. And so that was a little bit of a shift, because we were, we love brands. We like building brands. We like designing them. We like doing the marketing and understanding the customer journey, but we had to focus a lot of time on the other stuff as well.
Your co-founder, Lara, Lara, came from Rent the Runway?
Yes.
So, and both of you didn't have an engineering background per se?
Correct.
So at that point, you're building all these complex integrations.
We had a great CTO. And so he was, our amazing partner building all the back end stuff, and his team as well.
So tell me something, as a leader, how do you find a great CTO? Because I know this is a question we hear a lot for non-technical founders. And I know this had a twist at the end. We'll get to that. But at the beginning, we'll go to the honeymoon phase.
Yes.
How do you find, as a leader, and recruit a great CTO? What are some of your signals? What are some of the things that you look for that would make it successful? And you can't say network, because I know that's going to come out of your mouth too.
No, so we got really lucky. Our CTO had applied for a job at Rent the Runway and turned it down. So Lara could, neither of us would ever poach anyone from our previous companies, but he was not at one of our previous companies. So Lara reached back out to him. We met him for coffee. He was really excited about the idea and the product. And so he jumped on board. He was basically the first person and only person we met. And so we got really lucky. And
how did you evaluate his technical skills?
I think it had helped that he had already been evaluated by technical people at Rent the Runway.
Oh, okay.
Because he had been offered a job.
Oh, okay. You just didn't take it. Got it.
Exactly. And then he also was very good at speaking to regular people. Like, he could explain things very well to non-technical people, which I think is a special skill amongst engineers. He was personable. He could speak to anyone. He could, rally the troops from the engineering perspective, but also explain things to investors in a clear and concise way. And he had led teams in the past and managed teams in the past. So
love that.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, just to play that back for the audience, because I know they're going to be asking me later, is communication skills, technical proficiency, and then ability to lead teams. Mm-hmm. And you were able, because of the fact that where you came from, you were able to evaluate and check all those boxes.
Yes.
That plus the coffee test, which clearly worked out, led to what became a good partnership.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Without getting into specifics, what kind of deal did you have to cut to bring him on board? Because I think that's the big question: is how do you entice them?
I think
you have the
equity.
idea, so you just go straight equity.
We also paid him, but I don't think we paid him. I don't think we paid anyone a competitive salary in the first year.
Yeah.
We were making nothing.
Vesting schedule?
Yeah.
How many years?
4 year.
4
I
year.
feel like now I've heard a lot about a lot of 5-year vesting schedules.
Okay.
But yeah, 4 year, 1 year cliff. Totally just basic traditional vesting.
Okay. And that was no options, no additional options, no performance?
We did give everyone generally, with their annual review, usually additional options.
Gotcha. Okay. Good. Yeah, because I think that's...
Because we also didn't give cash bonuses, so it was generally...
Yeah.
You might get a raise and you might get additional options.
Thank you. It's a black box for people. They don't know how to...
Yeah. I think that's very early stage. I think later stage people have different expectations,
right.
But we could give equity, we couldn't give cash. So that's kind of... We all understood that. And
any big mistakes that you made in the first couple, 18 months? Anything that almost cost you the business?
That almost cost us the business in the first 18 months? I don't think anything that almost cost us the business. But we made tons of mistakes. I mean, our second round of funding, we went with a large strategic in the marketplace, and they pulled their term sheet after we had turned down our other term sheets. So we were kind of
We've heard that before.
in trouble.
How close? How much burn did you have left?
I mean, we cut a lot. We had like at a point, maybe like if we had continued on our current trajectory, like 8 weeks left.
Wow.
And at that point, Lara and I did have a small salary. We cut those completely. We cut marketing spend. Like we cut the fat.
Yeah.
And we made it, but it was tough and painful. And like we had, 6 months before, we were like so excited. We had this giant term sheet. We were partnering with like an industry leader. Like everything was awesome. And then it kind of came to a screeching halt.
Why?
Why did they back out? Legal.
They're legal?
Yeah.
Couldn't get around the deal. They didn't like the deal. Was there regulatory risk?
Regulatory risk.
Got it. So I want to talk about that regulatory risk because you went into a very regulated space, and most of the regulations are archaic and they don't make a whole lot of sense. How did you navigate that? Like, did you hire government relations people? Did you have them on the team full time? Like, were you trying to change the regulations?
So we had like liquor lawyers in most states, or all the states we operated in. Obviously, we started in New York, and then they're actually like, it's kind of a niche business, so they were hard for us to find. And we have decent networks, but those were hard for us to find. But once we got a toehold, they would all introduce us to the ones in other states because it wasn't competitive because people didn't operate really in multiple states. So we had a network of like liquor lawyers to give us advice. Generally, when we went to a new state, we'd send them our contract and then had a list of questions like, can we do percentage offers or dollar offers? Can we take a percentage of the sales? Can we give free delivery? Can we give $10 like monetary discounts? So we had this like list of questions that we sent to prospective or new lawyers, and then they edited our contract. And then we kind of went from there. We were involved with and went to a lot of like SLA, like State Liquor Authority hearings in New York. And all our friends were there. Like Drizzly was there, Instacart was there, like Amazon was there. And we were kind of like, we're all kind of like wanting the same thing. So we kind of were like, well, everyone else has way more money than us. Like we'll let them take the lead. But potentially if we had had more money, we might have gotten more involved or hired lobbyists. So, and like in some states, our business was illegal. In Georgia, so we obviously at points wanted to go to Atlanta because that's a major metro. But we had to wait years until the, laws changed and we were able to go there.
Wow. Was your business sometimes figuring out where the gray area was so that you could exist?
It was a lot of gray area because the laws were, as you mentioned, so arcane. They were written before the internet existed. So like they couldn't even contemplate this. And we were kind of this like unregulated fourth tier. So a lot of stuff it wasn't, nowhere did it say we couldn't do it, but nowhere did it say we could do it. So we just kind of moved forward.
De-risk it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a lot of startup stuff, like move fast and break things. And when you're teeny tiny, like you're not really a target either because you have nothing.
It's a special place. Yeah, it's a special place. I always say there's the four corners of the documents and then there's these lines around. You have to find the line.
Right. Like Amazon could never do that.
Yeah.
Because they are the ultimate target. Whereas we were at that point like a little tiny company in just New York City. So we could do a lot.
When the term sheet got pulled, did you feel it coming or did it hit you out of like left field?
It had dragged on for a while. So I think there was maybe concern, but it still hit us like a ton of bricks.
Yeah. Was it stressful?
Very.
Yeah. Talk about that. Like any like stress between you and your partners? Was it tough? Did you have a big layoff after?
No, I don't think we did layoffs then. No. It was super stressful. I feel like the two of us were fine, like with each other. Like that was not stressful because we were in it together. I feel like if I was a basket case, she was level-headed. If she was a basket case, I was level. It's nice to have someone, and you're usually, one of you is in a bad place. If you are, the other person's in a good place and kind of can weather the storm.
You still have Takeout Tuesdays then?
Yeah, we still can do Takeout Tuesday. So now she has 3 children, I have 2, so we really don't. It's more like maybe we'll have coffee or breakfast since that's the time we are, child free. So Yeah, it was.
You had kids during this time?
We started in 2013. We launched in 2014. I had my daughter in 2015.
So you're in the heart of this thing with the newborn.
Yes, I was.
It's amazing.
But I feel like it also gives you perspective. Like it almost like Minibar was all consuming before children. Like anything bad happened, it was like, oh my gosh, this is catastrophic. Like this is devastating. Yeah. But I feel like once you have children, you're like, it could be worse.
Yeah,
like,
you got a level 5 diaper over here.
Right. Or like a sick child is like a million times worse than anything that's going on at work. So it gives you a little perspective, but it also like you now have no like relaxing or downtime for yourself. So it's like more taxing on your overall kind of mental health and stability.
Working becomes a hobby, I feel like. You're like, I love work now.
Oh my gosh, I know. That's what I say. It's like, there's no more Sunday scaries. I'm like, oh my gosh, Monday, yes. I'm up. Like a quiet office by myself with like a coffee, like, yes, please.
I feel bad for my wife sometimes. I sit next to her, like we have dinner together and I'm like all by myself eating my food and it's so peaceful. And it's like 3 kids just
my gosh.
tugging at her while she's eating on her lap. She can't eat her food. She works and she's just like, and I just watch her food get cold and I'm like, oh, it just sucks. I'm like, if I was you, I'd just want to go back to work.
Totally. So there's no more Sunday scaries in our household. But wait, what were we saying before that?
We're talking about the stress.
Oh, the stress. Yes. So that was super stressful. And it's funny. It's almost like after I sold Minibar, my body kind of like went back to steady state. And it was like, oh, this is what a life without crippling stress is like. And I just get like giant knots in my shoulders. And like, I know when I'm stressed out because it's like I can feel them forming and just like, it is painful and just crippling. Mm-hmm. But it's funny to then be on the other side and you're like, oh, like that is not the norm. That's not how I have to live my life. But
so speaking of stressful things that hopefully didn't cause lots of knots. So the term she gets pulled, you keep moving forward. Yeah. It's getting a little bit dicey. And then shortly after, does your CTO leave or is that?
No, we then raised $5 million, kind of like a seed plus bridge round, whatever you want to call it, led by Corrigan Ventures, which has since changed its name to Alpaca, and they were great partners. They helped us finish out the round, and brought in a lot of other investors. So, and they were on our board through acquisition, and so we really enjoyed working with them. Would take money from them again, and then kind of after that, I mean, it had been like years. Like, the CTO joined in 2013. This is now 2017 or something, and I think he just felt like it wasn't as exciting. And so he decided to move on, which I think is totally natural and fair. And, as I had said before Minibar, I'd never stayed at a place more than like 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And so, so like we're all like friends on good terms, very like happy we built something together. But then we felt like we wouldn't necessarily be able to recruit a replacement CTO. So we ended up shifting our tech strategy and we laid off and reduced the tech team and went with outsourcing.
Like a third-party vendor.
Exactly. They were a 100% dedicated team. We could then scale them up, scale them down. If we needed an extra iOS, we could get one. But we had daily stand-up. We had a project lead. Our COO over time ended up managing the outsourced tech firm.
How'd you find them? Just as
through an investor, suggested them.
Nice.
And they've been great partners. Clever Tech, they just rebranded also. Apparently everyone we partner with changes their name at some point. And I'm using them now at my most recent startup, Revito. So, I obviously enjoyed working with them.
As a founder thinking about outsourced tech, because that comes up more than you, probably not surprising.
Yeah.
What are some
pros and cons?
No, not pros and cons. More so just like maybe guiding principles that you found that have held true for you over time. It sounds like getting a referral from someone you trust, obviously, is always important. But the shift between having an in-house engineering tech group to an outsourced tech group, you've been a part of both.
Yeah.
So I think just for founders listening to this now or in the future, what do you think is some guiding light principles that you might share with them in terms of how to successfully manage that outsourced partnership because it's such a critical part of the business.
Yeah. I mean, I think in having it in-house, they are more like invested and bought in and like passionate about the project, but they also want to work on what they want to work on. Whereas with an outsourced tech firm, we're like, this is our roadmap. This is what we want to build, and they build it. But are they going to, if we have a deadline Friday at 5 p.m., are they going to pull 2 all-nighters? No. So more the outsource, you might have to staff up if you want to meet a critical deadline, as opposed to like getting people, like everyone like in the office, staying up long hours and getting the project done together. So it's a little bit of like a behavioral shift as opposed to like a quality and outcome of the engineering. And like we did, like at points, it did make our lives easier also because we signed like a large partnership with 7-Eleven at one point, and we needed to integrate with their tech. So we needed to staff up 3 extra engineers for like 3 or 4 months. Like you don't want to hire 3 people for 3 or 4 months and, you know, search for them, interview them, hire them, lay them off, or like contract. So this was like really easy to be like, we need 3 extra engineers in this discipline, and they're there on Monday. And then I think even like one of them we liked so much that was on our team that we were like, we actually keep that one. They're so amazing. So it made like the like staffing up and staffing down, like, or if like, you know, we didn't cut costs, we'd be like, ooh, we need to, you know, cut back on our outsourced tech team, you know, and go down 1 or 2 people. So all of that, like, you know, there are definitely pros and cons, but it worked out well for us on both sides.
I want to go back to raising capital again. So you're raising $5 million. You mentioned an investor, and you said, I'd take money from them again. And I'd like to explore that a little bit because I think it's interesting for people to understand that that means that there's the opposition to that, which is that I would not take money from them again. What did you have investors where you would like, I would never take money from that person again? And what is so tell us like a bad, you don't have to, obviously no names unless you want to shout them out. What makes a good investor and what makes a bad investor? What makes an investor like, I'm never touching that person again versus?
I think like mutual respect would be a nice baseline.
You think?
So that, you know, kind of would be nice. And I think also like an investor shows their true colors when things aren't going well, right? Mm-hmm. And things weren't always going well. It's a startup. Some days were awesome, some days were terrible. And I think it's the investor that shows up with a good attitude and like a problem-solving mindset to help you through it and be your partner, especially at an early stage, is someone you want to work with again. And they roll their sleeves up and help you. Like, for example, during various like M&A discussions, the partner, David Goldberg from Corrigan, he had gone to law school. So he wasn't a practicing lawyer, but like he could read any document and see way more than I could see on like a quick pass before like sending it to our lawyers. Like he had a different perspective than we did. And it was a valuable perspective and one I respected and got, you know, something I couldn't do on my own. And he usually had different ideas or like different ways to structure things. Or he's seen, you know, I've done VC deals for one company. He sees tons of deals, so knows what's in the marketplace and knows other ways to structure things. Mm-hmm. So I think we benefited from that. But some people, you know, just want updates and don't provide any value, which isn't a deal breaker, but it's not helpful. Mm-hmm.
How do you vet for that?
I think doing reference calls.
On your money?
On, the investors. Like previous founders they have invested in and asking what their experience is. And
did you do that right away, or is that something you had to learn how to do?
We did not do that on the seed round, I would say.
Yeah.
But we didn't have any like bad eggs.
Okay.
So I would do that now, but also like if you're having a really hard time, I mean, it's nice to be able to say that, but like if you're having a really hard time fundraising and someone offers you money, it's hard to say no. Mm-hmm. So like I don't purport to like get on my high horse and say like, oh, like I'm too good for, you know, because it's not true. Like there were desperate times.
Rich people problems.
Exactly. So it's hard to say no to money and sometimes you don't have that luxury. So, but in an ideal world, you would do reference calls and if people came back with negative feedback, you would turn their money down. But
Give me an example of an investor that is not helpful in your, like, obviously there's like do nothing, right? Not answer the call, not be helpful, and so on and so forth. But what could an investor do negatively when you're at your worst time, at your darkest moments? Or maybe give an example.
I don't know. I guess create like more work for you, like make you feel bad, or like not provide like, I don't think someone has to provide solutions, but if you just come with problems, like, what are you providing?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe if you're pointing something out that we hadn't seen, that's helpful, or like about the bigger macro environment, because we're not seeing that because we're not VCs, that is helpful. But I think people that kind of waste your time and just kind of constantly want updates and like aren't providing any value isn't ideal. And then also like, or if a VC, you know, you pitch them, you've been in talks with them, and then maybe they go invest in your competitor, or, you know, they have multiple people in their portfolio that are competitive. I mean, I feel like they're just like various
conflicts,
but, you know, and sometimes Blair and I would get spoken down to because we were women, or like maybe not treated with them as much respect. Occasionally, but not frequently.
Okay. How did you deal with that?
We just like plowed ahead.
Huh?
We just plowed ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I don't know. It's hard to, in the moment, in a meeting, have that perfect comeback.
Yeah.
I wish I had it, but
It's a shame that it happens. So
hopefully it's getting better. I feel like a lot of people, you know, are trying to move the needle, and hopefully it seems the percentages of decision makers and funding is in the right direction.
fair.
Optimistic point of view. I like that.
Was that your last round, the 5 million before you?
Yes.
Okay. Good for you.
We ran a pretty tight ship, and we had two lines of business. One, our marketplace business, but we also had a large advertising business, which was basically 100% margin. So if that was doing well, we could like fund a lot of the business and like run it kind of break even.
So that's just brands paying you for word of mouth?
Like, do you want to be the featured vodka in the vodka category? Do you want to be the featured alcohol in the St. Patrick's Day?
So like pay-per-click type of thing?
Yeah.
Pay-per-click?
CPM.
Yeah, CPM.
Yeah, CPM.
Okay. And that was robust?
Yeah, that was robust. Because
Okay.
they were so regulated on what they could do. They could.
So you were a
it was
marketing
very
vehicle.
difficult for them to, you know, get to a customer at point of sale, and we weren't part of the 3-tier system, so it was not regulated generally on what they could do with us. I mean, some stuff they wouldn't do and we wouldn't do, but in terms of just advertising and stuff like that.
And you have the audience. So obviously, if someone's buying from you, they're a qualified buyer.
Totally. And they had no data either. Like, we had data on like who was buying what, percentage of share, if your advertising is growing your percentage of share. I mean, we knew we probably knew before everyone if a store was out of stock of like their product.
I was going to ask you, how about market shifts? Did you see any major market shift while you were running this business?
Yes, definitely. I mean, like hard seltzer and like all of those that like came out of nowhere, and they crushed it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing to see like the power of some of these, like Tito's vodka, like crazy.
Talk
like
about a titan.
Exactly. And tequila grew a ton. I feel like while we were in business, rosé did really well. I feel like now maybe it's like topped out. I don't know.
Yeah.
No,
but we definitely saw
like RTD everywhere all day.
Exactly. So we saw a lot of trends, and the RTD was new and grew while we were running.
Hit the S curve. Yeah.
Exactly. And though our customer was very wine heavy.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't think, mimics the market, but a little bit older, a little bit more female, a little bit more affluent, and like tons of wine.
Now, you raised the $5 million. What year was that?
2017.
So you got about 3 years into, and then you get hit with COVID.
Yes.
Okay.
COVID was our friend.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't wish COVID happened. It was horrible for, the world. But we just, by, luck, happened to be a huge COVID beneficiary.
Yeah.
Our business went crazy.
I feel like it was either Zoom or boom, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, every brand wanted to work with us because every restaurant and no one was going to liquor stores. and every restaurant was closed. So our advertising revenue was insane. Every store wanted to go get on our platform. Every customer wanted to order. I mean, I think our new buyers went up by like, I don't know, like 7 or 8x month over month.
Wow.
So every metric was up and to the right, except I joke our poor customer service team, because we were staffed for a business that was a fraction of what it was overnight. So our heads of customer service were amazing. We were already remote, the customer service team, so they were well equipped for kind of all the like working from home stuff. But they just got slammed.
The volume was just
The
crazy.
volume was, and like orders, the stores were overwhelmed, so the orders were obviously late. Like supply chain was messed up. They were obviously out of stocks. And, you know, some people were really nice and understood, and some people were not.
There was no like LLM chatbots back then.
Exactly. But we had to like turn off the phones because we just couldn't handle the volume. It was just bonkers. And we shifted our tech team basically to just build tools for customer service and the stores and delivery. And like there was no customer facing development almost for like a couple months.
Wow.
The one thing we did build, which worked pretty well for us, was we started just kind of hacking it together, but it was gift cards. Because every company wanted to do like at-home happy hours or like team building, and so we made like custom branded gift cards for companies if they wanted them, and then they basically were acquiring customers for us because they were paying customers to basically join Minibar, which was great. But it was a crazy time. But I feel like, you know, it's exciting to have your business do really, really well overnight. So I feel like all of us were invigorated and like we're excited to be working like long hours and, you know, see the business going crazy.
What made you shift and decide to go for the acquisition or to go to get acquired?
I mean, it had been a long road. I think it was time, and I think something we didn't properly think about as first-time founders when we started the business was who could acquire the business. I think we thought about it, but we didn't realize how much smaller that universe got when you tackled the liquor laws. Like the 3-tier system is so restrictive that many of the players, I think, would have either had to give up an entire revenue stream, shift kind of the business model, give up store partners. They would have had to like give up some stuff to buy us. So I think that was a challenge that we hadn't contemplated when starting the business, which was maybe like a mistake, but also like a nice part of entrepreneurship. Like you're like blindly optimistic and like plowing through walls and like, let's do this. But so 2020, everything was like gangbusters and crazy. And then 2021, early 2021, all our competitors were like, and I feel like alcohol delivery was like the ugly stepchild of food delivery. So we hadn't really gotten a lot of attention. Fundraising was a little bit harder. But in early 2021, like Drizzly got bought for $1 billion by Uber. Like Revito raised $155 million. Reserve Bar, who ultimately bought us, had raised from like Silver Lake and Southern. So like there were all these deals getting done in the alcohol sector, and people kind of were like sniffing around and like, you know, chatting with us. So, you know, I knew where my expertise were, and like M&A, like that was new to me. So we ended up hiring and like running a full bankers and running a process. So I interviewed like 8 banks. Actually, our final round interviews, I was stuck in the British Virgin Islands in March 2021 because my daughter on our last day tested positive for COVID.
Oh, wow.
So we were like in quarantine, like completely trapped. And I remember doing like Zoom calls in like a random hotel room.
Wow.
She was fine. We got out, but it was a very long vacation that was not a vacation. And so we hired bankers. That was like March, April. And we like ran a process over the summer, which was like a great learning experience. The bankers were great partners because I think another mistake I made was we didn't have a CFO. So I was doing everything. So maybe wearing too many hats. I mean, we had it like accountants and, you know, all of that outsourced. But so they were helpful and like filled in a lot of those gaps, building like big models and like built the deck. And so yeah, over the summer, you know, we had like first round bids, then you got access to the data room, final LOIs. And then ultimately we moved forward with Reserve Bar and, you know, we wanted to move quickly, which I think people should always try to do. You never know what's around the corner. Mm-hmm. And there are always fire drills and always last minute things that you weren't expecting. And And so then we closed the deal with them in November of 2021. So, I think they were high-end alcohol shipping.
How long was that?
I hired the bankers in like April and we closed in November.
Okay. Wow.
It was fast.
That's really fast.
Yeah. And yeah, so it was like a good combination because we were every day on demand. They were high-end shipping. So like it made sense. It like captured more share of someone's wallet and more occasions.
What was it like when you signed the deal, when the wire dropped? That's our big question.
I feel like it was like a giant, like you're just like letting out your breath. You've been holding it for like months. And you're like, oh my gosh, all the work. And you're like, oh my gosh. And you're like checking. Because I also feel like.
Where were you?
I must have been in New York.
Were you with your family? Were you with
Yes.
Okay.
I remember, what was it? I think when I signed the LOI, something, I think when we signed the deal, probably in September when we signed the deal, my husband, I'm like on the phone, like doing the legal, signing the deal. My husband's trying to install a washing machine in our apartment because the repair people never showed up. And like we have children, like you do so much laundry. And the water just turned on and is spraying all over our apartment, everywhere. So like our nanny is I'm like, get all the towels. My daughter is hysterically crying because she's like, what is going on? We live in an apartment building. I'm calling the back elevator. Like, I'm like, help. Like it was chaos, but I remember. And then we like cleaned everything up. And my husband, Charlie, and we went out to dinner to celebrate because I just signed like the term sheet, final, picked the horse. But it was chaos in our house. But when we signed the deal, also, I feel like you get the equity payout is one, and then your like option payout goes through payroll. So like that one took a couple more days, I feel like, to see in your bank account versus like the equity I had versus like the options. They were different. But it was definitely like, it is so stressful and so much work, and the legal back and forth and the, nitpicking over details is just painful. And the things that come out of the woodwork that you just had never expected or like, so it was a lot.
Leave it to the lawyers.
Exactly.
They always figure it out.
I know. They always figure it out, but it's definitely very costly.
Yeah.
But thrilled to have it done, Minibar in good hands.
What'd you do after the dinner? Did you book a vacation? Did you go to work?
So the dinner was after we signed the LOI, so didn't close the deal. And then in November, when we closed the deal, it was like the Friday before Thanksgiving. So I feel like I think I went away for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
In 21, I can't remember where I went. But yeah, we probably went away for Thanksgiving. And then I helped with like the integration and kind of getting...
You stayed on for how long?
Like 4 months.
Okay.
I feel like...
Did they ask you to stay longer, or you just didn't want to?
I think, everyone could have gone either way. I think,
You were done.
They had the founding team from Reserve Bar. They wanted to shape it and mold it the way they wanted to, which is totally reasonable and justified. And as, a leader should do something. And I had been a leader and a founder for 8 years at that point. And so kind of wanted to take a break and go my own way. And, I feel like I know about myself that I don't want to work at like a bigger company. I say like I like to drive a speedboat and like move fast and small things can change as opposed to a tanker where it's like forever to make a change. So, but like my team stayed on, my team is the best. And yeah, so I feel like it worked out well for everyone. And then I took the summer off to kind of like reflect and like take,
Get some mommy time in?
Yeah, sure. Like relax and play tennis. No, I'm kidding. No, I took a step back and I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? Because whatever it is, it'll probably be like 5+ years. So let's be like really thoughtful. So I went and like spoke to VCs. Like, did I want to go to the other side of the table? I went and spoke to like bigger companies, like later stage startups where I could like be like a GM or something. And ultimately I'm like doomed and like cursed, I guess, like just want to be an entrepreneur, which I don't think is like the smart path.
It's a mental health disease.
Yes. So I feel like it's the stressful path. I don't think it's the financially responsible path. but it seems to be. I don't know.
But it's your path.
It's
It's
definitely
currently my path again.
it's definitely not the best thing to do for your mental health.
No, it's
Financially responsible, it depends. If you did all right in your first deal, then you
But
can
if you
hold
look at
yourself
like
up.
the law of averages, like if you took like a traditional job versus like all startup outcomes and average them, probably the traditional job would pay off better, and you might have like a 401k and like matching or something, which you're not going to get at an early stage startup. So yeah, but it's like so fun. I mean, it's so fun hiring your team and like working with people you really like and not having like so much bureaucracy. And if like you want to do something, you can do it. And like anything you accomplish, it's like feels so good. Whereas like a job is just like steady state and like, okay, you accomplished your KPIs for the year. Great.
Now you have kids, 2 kids,
Yeah, I have a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old.
girls. What do you think they're gonna say about mommy?
I mean, the 2-year-old obviously has no idea. Like, we're happy if she like knows what's going on around her. But the 8-year-old is like, my mom's the boss. Like, she like runs the show. And my
That makes you feel good.
totally. And I feel like I'm being like a good role model. And then she's very funny, which makes me laugh because like to my husband, she's like, "You're not the boss, are you?" He's like, "Well, I run a team. I am the boss." She was like, "But you're not the top." Like, you're just like, I'm like, oh. But so I feel like it is setting
I feel like I'm going to leave this conversation alone.
but I feel like it's nice to set a good role model. And it makes it feel better when you're like, you know, you might feel guilty. You're not always around like 9 to 5, but you know, it's nice to like have her, that's her view of the world, right?
Good.
That like girls, you know, are the boss.
Superheroes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
That's awesome. And now you took 2 years off roughly? 1.5?
Yeah, like 1.
1 year
I
off.
started like a year ago.
And then
Oh
where?
no, that's 2023. I'm like so confused.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I took like 2022 off.
2022 off.
Yes.
And then what happened in that period of time between the selling the company, your tennis game, and
But yeah.
and your new company, Revito?
Yes. So
Where did it come from? Where's the kernel from that?
yeah, so I would brainstorm ideas like constantly. And to like make it full circle, Ajay, who started Urban Stems, who I sat next to at Quidsi, we would do like a weekly call and like brainstorm. So it was like nice to have a sounding board, someone who'd been through it and like to think through ideas and have different perspectives. So we did a weekly call and just would like toss around ideas and is it a good one? Should we do more research? Then we might talk to other people. And ultimately where I landed was I felt like there was no way to make smart purchasing and booking decisions. Like I don't trust mass reviews. Like I don't want to go on Yelp or Expedia. If you Google something, you're getting the best SEO optimized site. You're not getting the best answer for you. So like, how can you get the best information specifically for you? And I feel like some people hack it together. They might ask like a question on their Instagram stories. Like, anyone been to Paris? Can you recommend a restaurant? But that's not efficient. It's not housing the data in any smart way. It's not making it helpful to your other friends when they want to do the same thing. So I wanted to create a platform where you share what you do and buy so people can make better and smarter and more confident purchasing and booking decisions. Today, it's just that. Like you're just sharing kind of restaurants and hotels and you can follow your friends. But longer term, could it be like your new search engine for products and places built just for you? Or it like knows, could it build your perfect itinerary? You're going to Singapore. Like maybe your friends haven't even been there, but it knows exactly who your friends are, what you post, what you like of your friends. So it could still build you based on the whole, like all our data, the perfect itinerary. Or like you could make a to-do list, like back to school shopping. You're like kids sneakers, and we suggest 3 different pairs because we know exactly what you like, what your price point is, what your taste is, what your friends are buying. So just kind of helping you make smarter decisions. And so you can waste less time doing research and spend more time doing the things that you love, which was kind of also our motto at Minibar, like spend less time doing errands and like spend more time doing what you love. Like let us do the errands for you.
What did you have a bad so you mentioned like mass reviews. I have a big problem with that too. 'Cause you just feel like you hear these stories, and being in marketing or being around marketing, the services that you can get
Right.
reviews and this and
You
that.
can pay for reviews or their
Something
project
bad happened?
reviews. No.
No.
That's a good question. I haven't been asked that. But nothing has bad happened. But I feel like I always want reviews. Like, you get served ads on Instagram for like random stuff. And I'm like, does that beauty product work? Will I look 20 years younger? And it's like, I want to go ask a friend. Like, has anyone tried this? But that's an unreasonable ask. Like, to mass text 20 friends a random Instagram, like, beauty product, be like, hey, has anyone ever tried this? Like, that's a little weird. But if, like, people just share what they're doing and buying, and, like, longer term, like, obviously I'd rather integrate with whether it's, like, your Resi or OpenTable account or your Gmail, like the Shopify app does, and, like, pull in what you're doing, and then you can just, like, check, XXX, as opposed to now it's a little bit more work, and you have to, like, take an action. And it's right now like recommendations from friends are super normal. Like, people ask their friends on almost a daily or weekly basis for a recommendation, and friends are happy to share it. So right now it's more of a behavioral shift in that you have to, like, push out your recommendations. We have put questions into the app so you can ask everyone who follows you, like, hey, I'm going here, I need a birthday gift for an 8-year-old girl, and, like, people can then answer and share, and then that information lives on for anyone else who has that question. And it more mimics the offline experience of, like, pulling information through as opposed to, like, pushing it, which is more of the app today.
Did you raise capital?
I did. I've raised like $700,000.
Okay.
Friends and family, though, I have some institutional investors from Minibar that have participated.
Was it easier?
I would say the $700,000, considering the environment, was semi-easy. It was not easy, but, like, I had a track record. A lot of the people had invested with me before, so that was helpful. But now it is very hard.
You raising follow-on right now?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm, like, talking to people, and it's a very tough environment. I think it's easier to raise, which I mentioned before, almost on an idea, as opposed to once you have tangible stuff to show and people want data. Like, a seed investor is like, okay, you know, they give you different metrics. I need, like, this many thousand people on the app, or I need $1 million in ARR. And I'm like, well, that's impossible with no funding, basically. But so yes, but it is definitely a different and hard environment out there.
How big is your team today?
It's me and an outsourced tech team. So we're, you know.
So you're running lean.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I'm just saying, as a first-time user, I just got on it this morning.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, so, good.
Like, the experience was very easy to understand. It wasn't confusing. It was fast.
Right.
So yeah, nothing but positive feedback for you.
That's so nice to hear. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll dig deeper. I'm sure, you know, it's, again, I don't see any of the scars that you see.
Listeners, hear that. Yeah. Download Revito in the iOS App Store.
Yeah, we'll pop that in the show notes, folks. Definitely give her some support for sure.
What are your biggest challenges for the business today?
I would say getting users on the app, building tools that they want, and making it easier and clearer and like an impetus for them to share. I feel like what people, it's right now mainly it's like a feed of stuff you share, but I think what a lot of people like and are using it for are lists. So I've made lists. Some of them are for myself, like places I'm going. Like I'm going to Paris, so it's like restaurants and activities in Paris. But some of the lists I've made are almost for other people. Like I have like a list of like books I've read and enjoyed. So it's almost
his wife is like anyway amazing list builder.
If you want to go on vacation, she has like all these
like docs, and they're like thorough. Like,
oh wow!
Like if you put up an Instagram story, you're like, I'm going to such and such. Like his wife's been there, or they've been there together, and she's got like food recommendations, and she's.
I feel like I need her on my app.
You definitely need her.
No, as you described it, I was like, my wife would, and she's an exec at Disney, and she does all this stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah, she does this funny stuff. I'll tell you a funny story. She had a Google Doc for St. Martin, I want to say it was, and it was like. Here, it was like a daily thing, but yeah. We were single. We had no kids at the time, so she mixed in into the itinerary. She would put sexy time.
And then did she send it to someone?
She did.
Oh, no.
And she forgot.
Scripting or?
Yeah. And she was just like,
it's a restaurant. It's a restaurant.
We went frequently. No.
Yeah. She's gonna kill me. Sorry, babe.
That's pretty funny.
But she had that in the list, and it was like, like pool time. Go conch fishing or do this, do that, and then sexy time, and then sexy time, and then so she sent it to like a work colleague or something, and they were like, "What?" Gosh. And then they thought it was funny, but yeah. So I don't know if you can add that feature into your list.
Yeah, totally. She could make a custom-made product, but yeah, and then that's the great thing. It's like she makes it once, and then all her friends could just go and see her lists and like wherever they're going instead of bothering her over and over and over.
Yeah.
And you can easily share the lists, like text them to friends or email them.
Very cool.
Yeah, there's something special to that, especially with vacations, because I have like we actually just had this issue for the holidays. I said, let's book a couple vacations, one for us and then one for us with the kids, because I don't consider
Once a trip, once a vacation.
Bingo. See, I've taught many people that. I'm like, that is a family vacation, that is a family trip, and that is a vacation.
Totally.
And we booked the first vacation. So the first one we used a travel agent for. We knew where we wanted to go. We called the travel agent. She confirmed. She's like, yeah, we know luxury. We know this. This place is awesome. That was Costa Rica, 4 seasons. It was fucking amazing. And then the second one was we just booked it on our own because we weren't spending as much money. We didn't want to bother the travel agent with it. And we just went off reviews. And then as soon as we booked it, I asked one person and they were like, oh my God, don't do it. And then we started to dig into what they were talking about specifically within the reviews. And you start to realize that there reviews, there was like too many people, too many lines, too much this, too much that. It's like Disneyland in the Caribbean. You're not going to have fun. And we started to find all these strings where you could see that the reviews were sort of padded.
Yeah.
So that you didn't see see the bad ones. And then we quickly figured out that we were about to lose, thousands of dollars and have a miserable time for me, especially because all the things that were bad were the things that I really hated. So luckily we canceled, we got our money back and we pivoted and we were able to still get a good spot for spring break for the kids. But yeah, like it is a big problem. It is a big need for that.
Totally. I mean, I would rather one review like you had from a friend or someone I know than 1,000 mass reviews.
Because I trust that friend.
Exactly.
He knows who I am. We have this. We're friends. And we have the same sensibilities.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's great.
So that's the whole premise. Like, I might not care what a 60-year-old man in Iowa thinks of a restaurant. Well, maybe I do, but we have different everyone has different tastes and values different things, and some people want giant portions at a good price. I would rather a tiny portion and be overcharged. But
a tiny great portion.
Yes.
Not just
like,
tiny.
Like
I don't know, tiny spectacular portion.
I would rather a small tasting menu or like delicious sushi.
I was fine. I tracked you. I was like, I know what you mean by that. So getting people onto the app. What are you doing right now? Like, what are some of the things that you've tried and are failing at? I mean,
so it's early days. I feel like the app has just been like in the App Store for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay.
So I've been kind of like working through like bugs and like building other features. Very brand new. Like right now on the app is like friends and family and like industry people, like whether it's a VC or like, you guys.
Download it right now.
Excellent.
Should have done that.
And then, I'm looking to partner, whether it's like influencers or small brands, like they could make a list, like, my former co-founder works, she runs Super Smalls, which is kids jewelry. It's like, so they're the experts at like gifts for kids or like, when holidays are coming up, what are your picks for,
absolutely
holiday XYZ. So making, having people with like expert lists, curated lists, people sharing on their social channels. I think there is, it is really about friends in your community, but I think there's a place for experts also. Like, you might trust one person for cooking, one for travel. Like my husband's an avid kiteboarder. He wants to know what the top kiteboarders, what gear they're buying. Like he is a regular 9 to 5. He's not doing this all the time or researching it, but if he saw what the top kiteboarders, like where they're going, where they're staying, what they're buying, he'd be like, yes, please. Yes, please. Right. So I feel like there is a place for that on the app. So kind of currently like looking at small partnership opportunities, tapping into my network, and kind of focusing. I feel like it was similar to Minibar, like where we went city by city. And I think, it's better to go narrow and deep as opposed to wide and shallow. So, and since it's so friend-centric, kind of focusing on New York, since that's where my network is, my family's there, and I think it's interesting whether it's like my demographic, like a mom with kids in the city, or I have a 23-year-old sister who just graduated from college. Is it like more her demographic that like wants to share with friends and they're in a new city? Where do you get your nails done, your hair done, what bars and restaurants? So
is ubiquitous though.
Yes.
And that's, it's like people want it. No matter how old, what we're talking about.
Totally. But I feel like the 23-year-olds might be more accustomed to sharing everything in their life and everything they do.
Right.
Whereas it's maybe
the creation process versus
Exactly.
That makes sense.
But I should and will build more tools to make sharing easier and less of an uphill battle for someone.
How long did you spend on the app build? I know with your partner.
Sorry, this
for design
Revito?
Because you said you've been live for 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I started working on it in February of last year.
Okay.
In terms of like tech and design and whatnot.
It's been a journey.
Yeah. So I've had something in my hands since like May, June. And I've had like it on test flight with like friends on it, but
That's
officially
nice.
in the App Store for like 3 or 4 weeks, which is exciting.
We will
feel
definitely
like-
put that in the show notes. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Do you feel? I'm just to talk about test flight for a second. It's like such a thing where people like will say, "Hey, can you jump on test flight and give me feedback?" But that feedback tends to be like, I feel like friends and family tend to give you the worst feedback.
I feel like it's almost like, as opposed to their like verbal feedback, it's like seeing how they're using the app. Like,
Okay.
what are they posting? Like, how often are they posting? Like, what content are they enjoying? Like, and I feel like it has, to your point, skewed towards like restaurants and travel.
Yeah.
Some like books and TV and beauty, much less like fashion. Like, I feel like because it's less ubiquitous, right? Like, it's so narrow. Like, male, female, adult, children, like taste, price point. Whereas a book is like it appeals to more people each book. So as well as like restaurants are more frequent and everyone has to eat at some point. So it's been interesting to just see the use cases. And I think the lists are fun. I think it's fun to like see what people are making lists of and like what they're doing. So it's been a fun journey, but hopefully we're just at like chapter 0.5.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, I think so. I definitely think so. It's exciting to hear you start over again. Well, some people don't do that. To your point, they go the
They
VC
might be
route.
smarter.
Well, I think you're a builder. It shows in the conversation, and this has been fascinating getting to know you and to introduce you to our audience, and also to know your brand and now meet you. You know, we've known, like I said, we knew people. We knew the Drizzly guy. We had heard of Minibar, and to hear the journey of how you know what you went through, the schooling. Going into your own business and to go through all the trials and tribulations that you did in your journey. It's been fantastic to share that with you for this moment.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here and honored that you guys invited me.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you.
So Revito,
I was going to say that was the like the
Revito.
Hot Ones challenge with the wings, where it's like you camera, go. So,
Okay, download Revito. It's in the iOS App Store and share it and invite all your friends and then share your restaurants, your beauty pics, make lists, ask questions. It's super fun, but give it a try.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And thanks so much, as always, audience, for tuning in to Forward Obsessed. And we'll see you next time.
Lindsey Andrews, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Forward Obsessed. Please share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast app. If you have feedback or suggestions for our next guest, visit us at forwardobsessed.com. If you want to dive deeper into every interview, subscribe to our Substack at forwardobsessed.substack.com. Also, find us on Instagram or TikTok at forwardobsessed to see all the best moments from every episode. This episode was produced by Robert Roach from District Studios in New Haven, Connecticut. If you would like to learn more about the team that makes this show possible, visit digitalsurgeons.com.